I always liked black and white photos, and I'm feeling like doing a black and white video. The very first picture of Carl and me was a black and white photo. February 14th, 1991, the day we met. Back in that day, 1991, you had to get your photos developed at a photo shop, whatever they called them back then, and wait a few days to get the photos. That was when I met Carl, February 14th, 1991. I was 23. I flew across the country by myself to attend this event. They started with an opening night champagne party, and I walked in the room. There were hundreds of people there. And right away, I meet this girl. Her name is Mona, and we start talking. And then soon after that, minutes later, some guy named Mike comes over, introduces himself. And then before I know it, Mike and Mona are engaged in this conversation. And I am more, my focus is looking around the room because I just felt like I'm meeting someone there. And then across the room, I see this guy, long hair, ponytail, and a tux, and immediately couldn't take my eyes off of him. I knew I had to meet him. And then I turned to these two that I just met, Mona and Mike, and I say, "Hey, you don't happen to know?" And I pointed across the room. Um, I about fell over when Mike said, "Oh, yeah, I came in with him. I'll go get him." I was so nervous. I was like, "Oh, my goodness." I find out later that when Mike and Carl first came into the room, before Mike came over to us, again, there's hundreds of people in the room. Everyone's dressed up. It's a party celebration. And I find out that when Carl and Mike came into the room, Mike actually saw me and he goes to Carl and he said, "Hey, that girl looks like someone you might be interested in." And then he just went and to talk to us. Yeah. Um, anyway, that was the beginning. We met, we connected, we spent the few days together that we were there. And then I went back to Cincinnati. He stayed there. We were across the country. Um, and we just started having these long conversations on the phone, like always 2 hours at a time. 1991, when it was expensive to talk like that long distance, but we didn't care. I finally felt, I finally met someone, Carl, that really got who I was. And we became really good friends, talking all the time on the phone and even writing letters back and forth. So almost 2 years later, so we met in February 14th, 1991. And it was about almost 2 years later that he moved to St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. So in that almost 2 years' time that we didn't see each other, we were talking and writing letters back and forth and became really good friends. And then he moved to the Virgin Islands. And then 3 times during that next year, I went to visit him. And and then it was uh, 1994, January 1994. So I went for Christmas 1993. I stayed over for New Year's, and it was the beginning of January 94. And I left not knowing when I was gonna see him again. And I got back to Cincinnati where I was at the time, and it was so cold, and, um, I looked around at my life and I said, "What am I doing here? And let me just make a big change." And I went from not knowing when I would see him again to calling him up and saying, "Hey, I'm moving there," and I was there within 10 days. Right before I met Carl, I was just learning that I could actually create my own reality, that we create our reality with the way we think, like our thoughts are creating, with the way we feel, how we see things, what our beliefs are. And he was already on that path. He taught me this writing process right away that was so powerful, that made it possible so that I could feel safe. And on this island, I felt safe, and I began to um, attract into my life the opportunities that uh, let me really be and do what I love. And this has always been our thing. And I was always looking, we were always looking for how we could make this process faster. It's like just changing one thought at a time or one belief at a time. It was taking too long. And we were getting some really cool results with what we were doing. And but we're always saying, how can we do this faster? How can we do this faster? We've experienced so much together. We've been together 34 years. After many years in the Virgin Islands, we moved to New York City and we're there for a bunch of years. And when was it? Around 7 years, 7 or 8 years ago, we left New York City. Almost 8 years, 7 years, between 7 and 8. We left New York City and we came to Arizona. And then about 2.5 years ago, we were in the Phoenix area. And then 2.5 years ago, something happened that immediately brought us to Sedona, where we live presently. I remember when we first drove here, it was before the 2.5 years ago, and maybe 3.5 years ago or so was the first time we came here. And when we drove into Sedona, it was so beautiful. I cried. It was so beautiful. We were here for like 3 days for an event. And then when we left, I cried again because I didn't want to leave. Mm. And then we were so focused on our work and everything that we were creating for our MindFlavors members. And Carl has just kept creating this technology to higher and higher levels in these last 7 years. It's something, though, when we're really meant to be somewhere else, how life will bring us there. I used to always ask myself, what changed in me that I met someone like Carl? Again, this was 1991 that we met. And up until then, I had never met anyone like him, not even close. And he was everything that I had been asking for and dreaming of. And I felt finally that someone really saw who I was. I feel today that I'm not sure if anything really much changed in me. I feel like it was just meant to be. Like we planned it. Our souls planned to meet that day. So our first photo was a black and white photo. I finally met the one that I've been looking for since I was 13. That's a long time between 13 and 23. Those 10 years felt like forever. I didn't know when I would see him again. And I was so happy I took all of these photos. I got back to Cincinnati and I had to wait I don't know how many days to get these pictures. And then I got them. I remember driving. It was a pretty felt like it was a drive-through thing, if I remember correctly, and I'm sitting in my car, and I can't wait to look at these photos, and then just about every single one was double exposed. I couldn't see anything. I was crying. But there were 2 that you could see, and I'm sharing it here. There are 2 that you could see, and Carl put those 2 pictures together. And they're not the perfect picture, but you can feel our energy, you can see us. And it's so evident in these photos that these aren't 2 individuals meeting for the first time. These are 2 uh, reuniting, coming back to each other. So we were always asking the question, how can we do this faster? How can we do this faster, easier? We had so many good times together. We still continue to have so many good times together. And along the way, some things really were not easy for me. And I've shared some of that uh, when it comes to speaking. And so 10 years ago, Carl, we got the answer through Carl, and he created this MindFlavors technology. And sometimes life is so surprising. And, and what we're doing today wasn't a planned thing. We didn't set out to create a technology to do what we're doing today. It just was guided this way. And in the first few years, well, that first year, we did a beta test group to see if this worked on others other than us, and it did. And but it was wild. It's like those first few years, it was I was doing so much clearing, and with the technology and with the breath work, and so it was almost 7 years ago that we lined up to where we opened the doors to our first Mind Flavors program, and we have kept going since. And and it was so beautiful those first it's always been beautiful, but what I'm saying here is that um, I shared how my thing was speaking, so I didn't really in the beginning I wasn't comfortable talking on this, and I didn't have to. We didn't have to because everyone just found us somehow, and our Mind Flavors family is what we call it. Our members, our Mind Flavors family, they just kept growing, and we just kept so many of them just kept coming along with us. And then it was time for me to speak outside of this and for both of us to do this. Um, and this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing presently. And so um, we're going to be doing a live show. I'm sharing the link. Um, this is our first live show, I think. Yeah, we were supposed to do a live show last month or not too long ago, and it didn't end up being live. And this is going to be live. And I invite you to join us if you would like. And we'll be talking on how we create reality. We're going to be talking on how we can create the reality we choose and how it begins with us. And we'll be sharing our vision for uh, a better world, a more beautiful place, a more loving space for all of us. So we'd love to see you there.